Hi guys, it's Carlo here. Thank you for listening to our latest episode. It's the support of our community like you that allows us to continue to grow and make this into something truly extraordinary. If you enjoyed today's episode and you would like to listen to it without the interruption of ads and maybe even experience some bonus content, I'd invite you to join us on our newly launched Patreon. And if maybe that's not something you can do right now, please consider liking, subscribing, sharing, and commenting on places like YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, all that good stuff. You'll find us under @Millennials and Community for pretty much all of those. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to our second episode of the second season of the Millennials and Community podcast. On this episode, we explore how our skills can make an impact in our communities. So join us as we take a deeper dive on how Matt uses his skill set to bring play to everyone he meets. Thank you for being part of our community. Welcome to episode number 2 of season number 2 of the Millennials and Community podcast. It's official. The name change has happened. We are now the Millennials and Community podcast, but still also the Matt and Carlo podcast. You can't forget about us. Remember, we're humble.
Very, very humble.
Want to thank you guys for joining us today. Super excited about today's episode. We're going to tell you all about what it's about or who it's about right after we dive into a question, a very important question, but just for Matt, because this could not backfire in any way, shape, or form if we gave Matt a superpower. Matt, if you could have any superpower for the day, what would that superpower be?
So I think my superpower, I always go back and forth between one or the other. I think I'm going to stick with one for the purposes of actually committing to a bit. I think I would love to have the ability to become invisible. Here's why. I'm obsessed with people, and people watching is one of my favorite pastimes of all time. So I just feel, people watching in terms of get group dynamics and
I
stuff,
get it.
not in the creepy way. Anyway, I just think it'd be really, really cool to be the literal fly on the wall and be privy to conversation and information that you wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to be in, sneak into Parliament or the White House and just listen to a little something being going on and talking about. I think that'd be really great.
A little bit of insider trading.
A little bit is insider trading for sure.
Gotcha. Well, so the reason I've asked Matt that question and that question alone is because our next two episodes, episode 2 and episode 3, are all going to be about us. Now, let's not kid ourselves here. The majority of our episodes are about us. But why we think this is important is with this kind of rebranding and this new direction that we want to take the show with, we think it's important that you guys understand a little bit more about us, about who we are as people, what it is that we do that defines us, the goals, the aspirations, the things that we want to have in our lives and to be able to bring to others. And there's certain perspectives that we kind of bring doing what we do that I think are important. And I think this is also kind of an important deal to understand, because at the end of the day, both you and I are out here to make an impact for others. And we have both chosen certain vocations and skill sets that allow us to do that. So if we can make an impact with the Millennial and Community Show, we're happy with that. That's a great goal. But there are other ways we can make impact as well. And if people don't know how we can do that, it lessens our ability to do so.
Yep.
So this episode is going to be all about the M in Mac. It's going to be all about our friend Matt here. And we're going to get to know him a little bit better. And we're going to see that humble really come out today.
Love it. Love it. I'm going to put on my humble cap. Perfect.
All right, so we're going to start off with our first question. Can you share a pivotal moment in your life that shaped your perspective but has led you to this show?
Yeah, absolutely. When I was thinking about these questions, there's so many different stories and anecdotes that jumped out to me, but one that I think really defined me professionally early in my career, I want to share because I think it has played a really key role in how I've gotten to where I have in my career. So early in my career, I'd say it was about 3 years out of university, so still relatively new in terms of like professional work. And actually, it would have been earlier than that. It would have been 1 year because the event that we were planning for was 3 years out. So 1 year out of school, I had the opportunity through the work that I was doing to be a part of a planning committee for an international conference that we were hosting in Calgary in 2017. And it was something where, while we were committed to hosting a really strong, really transformative event in that moment in September of 2017, it was very well known throughout that we didn't just want to create an event. We wanted this conference to create a legacy for the way that people experience and think about play in the city of Calgary. And so while there was the conference planning going on, in parallel to the conference planning, we are also really, really focused on how can we create this legacy so that this conference not only is a great event that brings people together for the week of the conference, but it galvanizes all of the different sectors and industries and professions and professionals in Calgary that are doing work related to the importance of play. Why was this a transformational story for me? Well, I was, in my early 20s coming out of university, and through the mentors and the leaders that I was lucky enough to have supporting me, I was offered a seat at the table as a part of the steering committee for this group leading 30 organizations all towards more playful behaviors in Calgary. And the reason why this was really pivotal and the reason why it relates back to our podcast is being the youngest one, I had a lot of imposter syndrome about my role, my place at that table, about whether or not I had anything to offer that group and whether there was anything that I could do in a young, early career professional capacity to actually move the needle on this significant project that has, paved the way to so many initiatives in the social services industry in Calgary to this day. And what I learned was that when you're committed to learning, when you're committed to working hard, people, regardless of how experienced they are in their careers, they're willing to listen. And so I was very, very thankful to be in a group with 5 other people that were willing to listen to my ideas. They were willing to suffer through all the questions I was asking, and they really valued my expertise and the ideas that I was willing to contribute. And that experience really jump-started a lot of things for me in my career, but most importantly, it helped me get out of the sense of imposter syndrome that I think a lot of millennials face in their career trajectory. And it really, really helped me understand that when you're at the right seat at the right table, that there is a place where people are going to value you for you and be willing to give you a shot in what you think you know.
So really what it came down to is that you started to understand that those are the places you want to spend your time.
Exactly.
That instead of being worried about not being taken seriously, you became worried about finding the places you would be.
Exactly.
Okay. So true. So important. I love that for you. So through this opportunity to really step up, to have your opinions become valued, to learn that those are the places that you want to be, you've obviously developed certain skill sets, perspectives, the everyday real superpowers from those moments, from the times that you've spent and been given those opportunities to grow. So what would you say those unique skills are? What are those things that you think you can truly use to be of service to others?
Yeah, I think for me, it really comes back to curiosity and imagination. And I know that everybody has the capacity to be curious and imaginative, but for me, I think of this as a really foundational skill set that I try to do every day. It kind of leads back to me talking about invisibility as being my superpower, because I'm just curious, I want to know how the world works, and I want to know how the world would work or how my circles work if I were, somewhat removed or from those spaces. So I think what sets me apart is my drive to make curiosity and imagination just an integral part of me, both personally and professionally. And so this journey, and the last question I touched a little bit on my background in play. And for those of you who have seen and followed us through season 1, you're a little bit familiar that a lot of my work has been about advocating for and increasing the amount of playful behaviors, not just in children and families, but that has evolved to where I speak professionally and I offer workshops for organizations and businesses for how they as a staff can be more productive and better connected and better communicate as staff teams by being playful. So all of this work has really come back to this core of my drive and desire to be playful and be curious and be imaginative. It's what has driven me to work with kids for the last 15 plus years. I've really gotten to explore all of the magic that comes from the fluidity of working with kids and seeing all the different things that they do on a daily basis. It's been really tied to my fitness journey and being a fitness professional, teaching a dance fitness program. It even led me to my master's degree. It's both my paper that I wrote as part of my admission proposal to get into my degree, which was the Global Leadership Program at Royal Roads University, and my capstone project, which is the final project to graduate from my master's, were both rooted in this idea of play. Rooted in the idea of how play is an integral part of leadership, how people are better leaders when they exhibit playful behaviors like curiosity, and ultimately how playfulness can impact cultures and communities. And so my capstone was all about how to create positive, playful cultures in Alberta schools. And so my work has always centered around creating cultures that are positive, that are playful. And I think all of that from a personal standpoint comes back to my drive, my desire to make the communities and the places and the spaces around me more positive, playful places.
Like you do.
Thank you.
Like every day, in sometimes the most infuriating way. Because we'll be out just, going out for an evening or off on our recent holiday, and you're standing there in line dancing around like a goofball, which I appreciate about you. But at the same time, it's like, I don't have the energy for this. I'm being sapped energy by this man's play.
Blessing and a curse.
Yeah. Paired with that smile, I think you're unstoppable. And to me, when you talk about this idea of play, right? And we did an entire episode on this last season. When we talk about this episode of play, or this concept of play for you, there's nothing more that I think encapsulates you. Like if somebody were to try and describe you in one word, I think play would be it. And I'm not just trying to say this because this is what you said you're all about, but it's just this, it's the demeanor that you have. It's the way that you handle serious things. It's the way that you handle less serious things. It's just, you always want to try and bring the lighthearted out of all of the things in life, right? And not in the kind of way, because sometimes when people say, well, that person, is constantly goofing around, they assume he can't get anything done, or he's not serious in any way. Farthest from the truth from you. You're one of the most goal-oriented and task-oriented people I've ever met, but at the same time, you find a way to make sure that everybody has fun doing those things. And I think that's a very unique skill set, especially for a lot of millennials who have found themselves in the corporate world, right? And this is super intriguing to me, and we'll get into this a little bit when it's my turn next episode, but you come from this, formally educated, right, somewhat corporatized kind of work environment where I am less formally educated, have always worked in small or entrepreneurial companies. So for me, I've always run things on my own tune. But you have to slot yourself into these organizations that already exist, but you've always found yourself either quickly climbing that ladder into a position that lets you impact everybody below, or just impacting the entire organization with your play attitude, regardless of whether they put you in a position of power or not. And I think that that's something, if we could all bring to our times and to our work, would make life so much more enjoyable, right? Think about how many people that just can't wait to get home at the end of the day to see their kids or their spouse, because that's when they feel a sense of relaxed and a sense of play. What if you could just have that 24/7? So I think it's a great goal. I love it. I think it's exactly what we need more in some of our lives.
I appreciate that very much. And as you're saying that, all I can think of is that like, I'm just like a playful computer virus that you just plug in and it just like, and just infects everything is the only like image that I had in my.
That is an accurate approximation of what time with Matt is like. Whether you want to play or not, you're going to be goofing or not. All right. So the things that we do, the things that we learn, the skill sets that we have, they're valuable to us as individual people. But where they truly start to shine is, like I was just talking about, in our communities, in the groups of people that we have around us, because they get to experience that from us. They get to be impacted a little bit. So to truly try and do what you're doing, where you're bringing this play into every space around you, you need to have a good understanding of those communities that you're a part of. So what do you use? What are the triggers for you that have helped you kind of shape your understanding of community and how you want to impact it?
Yeah, I think that for one, I mean, I've had the privilege of being a part of so many different types of communities. You know, so in childhood, I was involved in lots of athletics. So I played football, basketball, even soccer. So that team community dynamic was really, really a strong influence on me. I was a member of Scouts Canada for most of my childhood, all the way up to 17 years of age. So there was that sort of outdoor experiential learning community that I got to be a part of. You know, certainly different education institutions, whether it was the universities I attended or high school or junior high or whatever, and there was always that community aspect. So I think that, you know, when I think about the way and what has shaped and defined my concept of community, it's always been the case that I have looked at experiences as interactions, or I have defined my experiences based on interactions with a group of humans or other humans, however big that group was, you know. And this is true of me in university, right? Like I thrived in group projects. People usually hate group projects. I thrive in group projects because for me, the most compelling part of any experience is the amalgamation or the group dynamic that is formed therein. And to me, that's how I define community, is like any sort of, or one of the ways that I define community is really like any sort of collection of human beings and how they manage to interact and support one another. Traveling's the same, sports is the same. Like my favorite teams, I'm, you know, obviously invested in their win-loss record, but I'm also really invested in like what the team culture, the dynamic, the vibe with the coaches tend to be, right? So like, this is really what has shaped my idea of community. And even the groups that I've worked with, I've always seen all of my teams as communities or families, because I think that in order to advance common goals, whether they happen to be personal common goals or professional common goals, that we need to be able to build the infrastructure to do that. And every industry that I've ever worked in, that infrastructure is starts and stops with the people. And so that's really what defines community and has helped shape my concept of community, is just always thinking about the people element of every environment that I've happened to be in.
And do you feel that these environments, as you trying to bring this concept of play into them, you know, obviously this is a little bit more common probably for the groups that you spend more time a part of, but as you bring this play into these communities that you're part of, do you feel like you manage, like, do you feel like you're making an impact in a way that you feel is positive?
Yeah, I definitely do. I mean, I think earlier in my career, I would have been a little bit more hesitant to attribute like my involvement in these things as one of the main triggers for some of those changes happening. But I think more recently, I've certainly come to see that there's a direct correlation between like the ways in which I show up in those spaces and how they as a whole internalize some of those playful behaviors, and how the results of that are really impactful, both from a productivity standpoint, but also just a connection standpoint.
I love it. All right. So you've learned through time that your big calling, your big goal is to try and inject play into everything. You learned what a community is, and you've learned that you are actually making an impact in it. So what inspired you to really start a podcast? And what are you trying to do here with it?
Yeah, I mean, we had this moment, and at this point, it was about a year and a half ago when you and I had this moment of like, we should start a podcast. And at that moment, it was kind of this like, well, yeah, obviously, like we love hearing ourselves talk. Maybe other people would too. But it grew from there for me. And so I mentioned a little bit that I'm a professional speaker. I've been speaking professionally for almost 6 years now. And like I said, I specialize in creating and delivering workshops that inspire more productive and positive teams through games and activities for people to like rethink their communication strategies amongst their team. And we were a couple months in and a couple episodes in, but I had this moment where I had a client organization in Lethbridge that before my gig with them, they called me and said, hey, we've invited somebody from the Lethbridge Herald to come and do a little bit of a piece about this, and they'd like to interview you. Is that okay? It's like, yeah, sure, no problem. So I was interviewed for it. The article came out in the Lethbridge Herald, and everything was all good. And then I got a call about a month later from a prospective client in Edmonton, and they had found me or heard about me because they had seen this article. And there's this cool light bulb moment for me. You know, I have a full-time job that I love very, very much. I'm very, very grateful for the work that I do with ARPA, which is the Alberta Recreation and Parks Association. And so I don't actively promote my professional speaking, but it occurred to me in that moment that if there was an opportunity, a way for more people to get even just small touch points with my content, my work, that this has the opportunity to expand the breadth and impact that I might be able to have in the industries to which I like to work and speak with and for. So for me, that was kind of the moment of our podcast is a really, really special time that we get to spend together. It's also a really cool like test bed for concepts and ideas and thoughts that I've been having. And it's just so helpful to be able to hear myself say things like that didn't really track, or that's a cool bit. Like I want to see if that can be something that I can then leverage and use as a part of my professional speaking work. And so that's, I think, one of the big pieces that inspires me to be a part of the show with you.
You heard it here, folks. This is the test bed. This is where he's going to screw up more than ever. So if you want to see that.
This is true.
So what would you say as you've kind of continued down this path, and now we've started this podcast and we're going down this idea of, hey, we're millennials. We're not just men, but we're millennials. And this encompasses everybody. Are there things that you do to kind of stay on the pulse or the track of what it is that millennials are going through that you think that we can discuss during this show? Like, well, how do you stay involved, and not just lose sight of what we want this show to be?
Yeah, I think that the way that I look at this, I've always thought of myself as a very like big picture strategic thinker. And so when I think about ways in which I try to like stay informed and keep my finger on the pulse, I think about my constant drive to like zoom out and see things from a systems lens, right? So like I am very, very interested in like current events, what's going on around the world, what's going on here at home, what are different political dynamics at either the municipal, provincial, national, international, state, right? Like I work really hard to keep myself informed of some of these like big picture issues. And then when you kind of like roll that all up and zoom back in, understanding different perspectives on some of these larger global issues or larger community level issues gives me a different perspective to understand how these things affect or don't affect my life. And so when you talk about keeping your finger on the pulse of the millennial experience, for me, I think it's really, really interesting, one, to see how these big experiences affect me as a millennial, but then two, I get to go and then have conversations with people in my life, friends, family, colleagues, acquaintances that happen to be in similar age cohorts or different age cohorts, and try to triangulate the way that they interact with that information and to see the differences in the way that baby boomers, Gen Xers will interpret certain information, the ways that Gen Z individuals will interpret and internalize different information, and just kind of like triangulating with that with what it means for me is really what I do to try to keep my finger on the pulse.
Now, you use the word perspective a couple times there.
Yeah.
And you know, as a content creator, that's one of your biggest goals, is to try and bring your perspective to the things that are going on in life. But we've kind of taken the stance with this show that we don't want it just to be our perspectives.
Yeah.
We want the perspective of the community as a whole around us. So how do you think we're going to do that? What do you think we need to do on an episode basis to make sure that not only we are being exposed to new perspectives, but our audiences as well?
Yeah, so one of my favorite, and I think I mentioned this in a previous episode, my favorite Halloween costume that I ever did, I was the devil. Face paint, ears, red suit, the whole bit. But I'm going to tell you, I think that it's incumbent on us as people who are offering information and perspectives to challenge the status quo by being devil's advocate. I think it's really, really important that even in a world in which we agree on certain things, and we don't agree on everything, but in a world where you and I agree on certain things, it is incumbent on us to be able to offer or consider differing perspectives, and even at the risk of like playing devil's advocate and challenging kind of what is coming up. I think that's really, really important. I am such a huge proponent on like, there's no such thing as like black and white. You know, we live within these like internal shades of gray. Speaking of Halloween costumes, Carlo's been a lot of things to a lot of people. I think that it's really, really important that we never, ever lock ourselves into thinking that anything is binary, right? It's not 1, 2, it's not black, white. And I think so long as we can approach any sort of conversation or topic or dynamic with the inherent understanding that there are never just two sides to a coin, two sides to a story, then that affords us the ability to look actively for those diverse perspectives. Because if we know there's more than two out there, then our minds are going to be open to receiving them. And so, you know, me standing and sitting in the space of like, there are more than two always, allows me to welcome those diverse perspectives in when they emerge.
Okay, I like it. And do you think that by having this open mind to, like you said, there's going to be more than two sides of the coin, there's two sides to a perspective. Is that how you think that we're going to keep this show relevant? Is that how we're going to evolve it over time? Or do you have other thoughts for that?
Yeah, I think the relevancy thing is really, really important. I mean, for one, I think and would love to speak on some more kind of like current events when and as they're happening. I think that really, really helps, because in any sort of life current event thing, there are underlying themes and tones that we can kind of explore and develop. So that's kind of an important piece. As we've alluded to, it's definitely something that we really value, to bring more guests onto the show. And that's something that I'm really, really excited about, because what better way to welcome diverse perspectives than to literally welcome other people with other perspectives into our worlds and share those with our audiences. And so I think that's really what's most important. And I think so long as that I remain committed and we remain committed to being curious, like the only time in my eyes that the things that we would want to share stop being relevant is when we stop being curious. Because the minute the curiosity stops, we're basically shutting the doors to new information coming in, because we think we've experienced enough about the world to make summary judgments when new information comes along. And so I think that, you know, my commitment to you and my commitment to all of you as our listeners is like that I always want to be curious and want to be learning more and in taking more information. And that my hope is that in and of itself is going to help keep those relevant, new and fresh perspectives on things.
So let's flip it a little bit, because, you know, we've talked about you, we've talked about the impact that you want to make, we've talked about what we want the show and its impact to be. But this show is nothing if not goofy, right? We have a lot of fun. We have a lot of back and forth. You know, there's many shades to us, you might say. This was referenced on a past episode, so go back and look at it. So what would be funny or a memorable behind the scenes moment that we had that maybe our listeners and our audience wouldn't be aware of?
Well, okay, so I'd say ducks. I mean, explain for those of you that listen to the podcast, there's going to be one episode in season 1 that you would have been very, very confused about, and we like kind of explained it in that moment, but it certainly would have been much more impactful if you had seen. There were a dozen little mini rubber ducks that just like existed in our frame of podcast. They're like sitting on our shoulder, on our leg, behind us, in the foreground, in the background, every which way. And you know, so that's kind of like one memorable thing that sticks out. But two, like every sort of time that we start filming, when we come together, we like set up our camera, have everything set up. It's like just this, again, this goofy back and forth bantering. And it just like leads us to this place where it's just like, oh man. And you can generally tell how an episode's going to go because sometimes we have really like coherent dialogue recording, and sometimes it's just like completely incoherent babble where I like don't think either of us are actually speaking English sometimes. And so you're like, it's going to be one of those episodes today. And so, you know, for those of you that were under some sort of illusion that we have it all together, you could not be further from the truth. And so I think those are the things that I enjoy most about being kind of like behind the scenes with the show.
Yeah, it's definitely, I don't want to say that we hide anything behind our show. Like, you guys get all of what Matt and I are, but there are some things that we intentionally edit out because it's just incoherency. It's ridiculous. Okay, so to kind of close us off here, what would you say your biggest hope and your biggest excitement is for season 2 of this show?
Yeah, I think what I'm most excited for is to like go a bit deeper, explore more things, but also to do it a bit quicker. Like one of the things, you know, you've seen the new space, the little bit newer of an episode or an updated episode format. We're trying to keep our episodes a little bit shorter, and we hope that that's going to create more excitement in everyone else. So I guess what I'm most excited for is to see if some of the incremental adjustments and evolutions and changes that we've made are going to result in more excitement being driven in the people that share their time with us in viewing and listening to the show.
I think that's a great aspiration to have for our new season, and it's one I share as well, is that we want everything to be more funny, more exciting, more engagement, more Matt, more Carlo, more Matt, more Mac, all the things. So on that note, I hope that you guys have gotten a little bit more of a perspective on who Matt is as part of this show. We think it's really important for you guys to understand who we are, because the perspectives that we bring, we like to think are a little bit unique because of the choices and the paths that we've chosen down during our lives. So I'm going to invite Matt to close us off for this episode. Do we want to finish off? Why don't you finish off with some final thoughts, and then maybe we'll do some gratitude?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that one of the reasons that I get so excited about getting to be in a position to share information, it's not actually the information that I get to share, but it's the people that I get to share it with. And there's just this like general sense of excitement when I think about the potential that one idea, one message could have. And that doesn't mean that I am conveying something that's novel or new or different that people might not have heard, but it's this excitement of when I get in front of a group of people or in front of a camera, I'm excited by the idea that there could be one statement, one moment that is received or heard by one person at that right point in time, that they are going to be able to go and make one change in their life that is going to then ripple and affect so many other different things. You know, I thought about this a lot when I was working with kids, that you're never just working with kids. When you're working with kids, single choices, single words that you say, single things and moments that you choose to do have this ripple effect in that one child, a group of children that they then go and interact with their families. And one comment to one group of children has 100 or more different ripples throughout the community. And that always really stuck with me. And that's what makes it so exciting for me to be on the stage, is to like imagine what that one moment in time could do in the lives of countless other people that I can't even begin to imagine. And I think that's really, really exciting, because that certainly happened to me listening to content creators and professional speakers. And that's what gets me really, really excited. Yeah. And it's just, it fires me up thinking about different ways in which the world can be better for the sharing of ideas.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So I have to say that, again, I am so grateful. I'm so grateful to share this space with you. I'm grateful that you are always so open and willing to update and evolve and change and make these incremental differences. We have so much ownership in this thing together, and they always say, at least I was always taught as a school, beware of partnerships because they always go badly. But what I appreciate is that both of us are willing to put our egos aside, and that you're so willing to like adopt new ideas and just to try and test stuff out, because I think that level of experimentation really bodes well for our podcast, our friendship, but also like to see where we can move forward with together.
Thank you. Yeah, it's I'm never shy away from trying something new. Doesn't always work out, but you can't shy away from it. My gratitude is kind of further to what I was saying earlier, this concept of play that you bring in everything. And as frustrating as it is after a long day when I am tired and you are bouncing off of the walls, there's no other way I imagine you, right? You know how sometimes you just have an image of someone in your mind and it's you dancing constantly. that's your internal emoji for me. So thank you. So yeah, I'm grateful that you have this idea of play, that is such a big part of your personality. And I'm thankful for the ways that you find to bring that not only in your own life, but in my life. And then sometimes just the random interactions that we get to have with our community, with people around us. So thank you for just being all play.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, folks. That's going to be episode number 2 of the Millennials and Community Podcast, season number 2. We want to invite you to join us on all of our social media platforms. We'll have made that real clear by now as to where you can find us if there has been any name changes, but I'm not working on it. I'm working on it to be pretty easy. Engage with us. Come join us. Tell us what you're liking about some of the new concepts that we're having, some of the shorter episode lengths, the new editing formats. We're working on making this show easier to digest, easier to create, so we can be more creative with it and less focused on like the how do you do. So any feedback that you can give us, and share our show with people, right? That's our goal. We want to be out there and have more people listen to us and get more value from it. So share, like, subscribe, all those things all the YouTubers tell you to do.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you next episode.
Bye, guys.